Think about your phone, maybe the clothes you're wearing, where your food comes from. It's instant, isn't it? You connect globally, buy something made thousands of miles away, gets to your door in days. We just live in this super integrated world. But do we ever really stop and ask, how did this actually happen? And, what's the real cost? Not just the price tag, but the economic, the social, the environmental cost of it all.
That's a great question. And that cost, the true cost, is really what our source material gets into today. It comes at it from a very practical business angle. We're talking about globalization. Basically, it's just this increasing connection, this web between economies, businesses, people all over the world. It lets goods, services, money, and really importantly, ideas flow across borders.
Okay, so it's more than just clicking buy on an international website. It's the whole system behind it, right? Like how a company manages a supply chain across, 3 continents. And it's also how you, listening now, can jump on social media and instantly connect with someone or something happening anywhere.
Exactly. Yeah. So our mission in this deep dive, think of it like we're guiding you through the balance sheet for globalization that these business sources lay out.
Yeah.
We need to unpack what really sped this whole thing up, the tech, the politics, then weigh up the good stuff, the benefits for companies and us as consumers, and then critically look at the downsides, the challenges, the hidden costs maybe for everyone.
Okay, let's unpack that. The sources point to these huge kind of linker-connected forces. They didn't just let trade happen. They actively pushed it, accelerated it, especially over the last, 50 years or so. So what were those big drivers? Where did it start?
Well, the number one engine, you really can't argue with this, is technology. Big improvements there. We talk about the internet, mobile phones, but what they really did was make information travel instantly. Distance almost became irrelevant, didn't it? It totally changed how suppliers and customers could find each other, do business anywhere in the world.
Right. I always think of something like Amazon or similar platforms. They're like the perfect example of that tech driver. Yeah. They let some small craft maker here in the UK sell to someone in, say, Australia without needing expensive offices over there. It just cut out so much friction.
Exactly. And while the internet moved the information, the world needed something similar for moving the stuff, the physical goods, just as efficiently. And that brings us to driver number 2. Massive changes in transport and logistics. Yeah, planes and ships got faster, sure, but the absolute revolution, containerization.
It's funny because it sounds so simple, doesn't it? Just standardized metal boxes.
Yeah.
But it completely reshaped world trade.
It really did. It created this standard global system. A container packed in Shanghai fits perfectly onto a truck, then a train, then a ship, anywhere. No repacking needed. This slashed costs massively. And crucially, it made complex things like just-in-time manufacturing possible on a global scale, where parts arrive just when they're needed.
Right. That's the backbone of modern supply chains, isn't it?
It absolutely is, yeah.
But that physical stuff only works if governments actually allow it. Which leads straight to the third big factor, trade liberalization. This needed political willpower, right, to actually tear down barriers that had been built up for ages.
That's spot on. Governments consciously decided to lower trade barriers. Things like tariffs, those are taxes on imports and quotas, which limit how much you can import. Taking those down actively encourages trade. Our sources mention big trade agreements, like the UK's deals with the EU or Commonwealth countries. They were key for opening borders and encouraging the investment needed to move all those goods.
Okay, so you've got tech, transport, open borders.
Yeah.
And then you have the big players actually doing it. The multinational corporations, MNCs, your Apples, your McDonald's, your Tesco's, these huge companies expanding everywhere, looking for profit, looking to cut costs.
Yeah, they build these massive global supply chains, always looking for cheaper labor, cheaper materials. It drives down the overall cost of making things. And what's interesting, too, is the cultural side. Globalization means more travel, more social media interaction, so people start wanting global brands. But the MNCs have to be smart about it, too. Like Coca-Cola or Nike, they keep their main brand image, sure, but they tweak things, flavors, sizes, ads for local tastes. It's this constant sort of dance between being global and being local.
Okay, so those are the accelerators. Tech, cheap transport, open borders, and big companies pushing it. It all came together and just fundamentally changed how economies work. Right, let's talk about the payoff then. What are the clear wins for businesses and for us, as consumers?
Well, you can draw a straight line from those drivers to the advantages. For businesses, the big one is access. Access to way more customers, new revenue streams, and maybe just as important, reducing risk, diversifying.
Yeah, that makes total sense from a business perspective. If you only sell in your home country, you're totally exposed if that market tanks. The sources point to UK companies like Dyson, Rolls-Royce, huge players selling really complex stuff all over the world. They're not just reliant on the UK economy.
Exactly. And that directly feeds into a massive benefit for us, lower costs. Businesses move production where labor is cheaper, materials are cheaper, maybe regulations are lighter. Think China or India. Those lower production costs often mean more competitive prices for the person buying the final product.
And this gets amplified by economies of scale, right? How does that work when everything's global?
Right. Economies of scale just means the more you make of something, the cheaper each individual item becomes to produce. Globalization makes this possible on a huge scale because your market isn't just one country, it could be the whole world. So supermarkets like Tesco, for instance, can buy in absolutely enormous quantities internationally from global suppliers. They get huge discounts, and some of that saving gets passed on to you, the customer, as lower prices.
And it's not just about things being cheaper, is it? It's also about variety and innovation. We kind of take it for granted now, don't we? Being able to buy clothes designed in the US, electronics from Korea, food from all over Europe.
hmm And that intense global competition, it's a huge driver for progress. Think about Apple and Samsung. They're in this constant battle, pushing each other to make the next big thing. That pressure means consumers everywhere get better, cheaper, more innovative products, and usually faster than they would otherwise.
And then there's the bigger picture, the whole economy. Globalization can boost growth by attracting investment from overseas, bringing in money and skills, like the UK's financial services sector. It's a massive global hub, right? It thrives almost entirely because of those deep international connections. It makes a pretty strong case for efficiency and prosperity.
It does. It's a very compelling case. But this is where we need to pause, bring in that critical thinking. We have to shift gears now because the very same things that bring us cheap goods and amazing variety also create some really significant problems, some steep challenges, ethically and economically.
Right, here's where the trade-offs start to bite, especially close to home. The first big drawback mentioned is brutal competition for local businesses and jobs being lost here.
Correct. Small local firms, say in the UK, often just can't compete on price with huge global brands that have massive economies of scale behind them. But the real social cost comes when companies move production overseas. Chasing those lower labor costs often means shutting down factories here, leading to major job losses, especially in manufacturing.
Yeah, the sources talk about the decline of traditional British industries,
Yeah.
outsourcing to places like China, India.
Mm.
It wasn't just jobs lost, was it? It was whole communities affected, people needing to retrain, often for jobs that paid less. It really changed the shape of the workforce.
And that chase for the lowest possible cost leads straight into some really tricky ethical areas. Worker exploitation. When MNCs set up shop in countries with weaker labor laws, weaker protections, there's a real risk that saving money becomes more important than treating workers fairly. This can mean low wages, unsafe conditions, really long hours. Basically, the kind of sweatshop conditions people associate with, say, fast fashion or parts of the electronics industry.
So we get the benefit of the low price, but that price might be kind of subsidized by poor conditions for workers somewhere else.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder about supply chains and how transparent they really are.
Absolutely. Then there's the vulnerability issue, that interconnectedness that makes everything so efficient. It also makes the system quite fragile. Countries that rely heavily on global trade, and the UK is definitely one, become really vulnerable to global shocks, economic downturns elsewhere, or sudden disruptions like, remember the ship stuck in the Suez Canal, that kind of thing.
Mhm. And that vulnerability hits us directly, doesn't it? Through things like exchange rates.
Hmm.
If the pound gets weaker against, say, the dollar or the euro, how does that play out for the UK consumer?
Well, if the pound weakens, imports instantly cost more. So those international goods the supermarkets are buying, the price goes up, and that cost usually gets passed straight on to you at the checkout. It feeds inflation.
All right.
Our reliance on global trade means our wallets are partly at the mercy of international currency markets we don't control.
And we can't ignore the environmental costs, the long-term stuff. All this global trade means way more transportation, ships, planes, massive carbon emissions, pollution. It feeds directly into climate change.
Yeah, and that often goes hand in hand with a cultural concern. We said MNCs adapt locally, sure, but just the sheer presence, the visibility of global brands, global fast food chains, it can start to overshadow local cultures, local traditions, even local food. Cultural erosion, some call it.
Okay, one last big one we need to touch on. How some of these huge global companies manage to pay less tax in the countries where they actually make their money. Tax avoidance.
Right. This gets complicated, but it's really important. MNCs can be very, very good at using differences in tax laws between countries. They often shift profits legally from high tax places like the UK to places with much lower tax rates, tax havens sometimes. One key way they do this is through something called transfer pricing.
Transfer pricing. Okay, that sounds technical. Can you break that down a bit?
Sure. Basically, it's about the price set for transactions inside the same multinational group, but across borders. So imagine a division of a company here in the UK buys a service, maybe the right to use the brand name, some intellectual property from another division of the same company, but that other division is based in a low tax country. If they set a really high internal price for that service, the UK division records a big expense. That reduces its taxable profit here in the UK.
I see. So the profit gets recorded where the tax is lowest, even if the actual sale to the customer happened here.
Precisely. It's legal usually, but it means they contribute less tax in the UK, even while they're using UK infrastructure, selling to UK consumers, and making good revenue here.
Okay, so let's try and pull this all together. Globalization. It was kicked off by this powerful mix of technology, cheaper transport, governments opening borders,
Right. Driven by MNCs seeking growth and efficiency.
and it delivered some undeniable pluses. Huge new markets, lower costs for businesses and consumers, incredible product variety, innovation.
But it's the serious flip side. Those same forces brought job losses at home, really difficult ethical questions about labor standards, made economies more vulnerable to global shocks, damaged the environment.
And opened the door for sophisticated tax avoidance by some of the biggest players.
Exactly. Understanding that whole picture, the good and the bad, the nuance is just essential. For governments trying to make policy, for businesses planning strategy, for all of us trying to navigate this interconnected and maybe increasingly fragile world.
So here's a final thought then. If containerization, that simple steel box, totally changed global trade by making moving physical stuff incredibly efficient, what's the equivalent now? What unseen infrastructure, maybe not physical, maybe digital, maybe something else entirely, is evolving right now that could accelerate globalization again or change it completely? Think about instant digital money, or maybe advanced AI and robotics replacing labor globally. And more importantly, perhaps, what hidden costs, what new downsides might that next system bring that we haven't even started thinking about yet?
That's the really big question, isn't it? Something definitely for you to mull over as you process this deep dive. The flow of goods, information, capital, it never stops evolving. And neither should our thinking about its real impact.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We hope you can take some of this forward and apply it to understanding the complex global economy all around you. We'll see you next time.